Right, hey guys, how are we doing? Back with another video from Broken Ronin. I'm really looking forward to this one. This is going to be cool. I love, like I said, I love crossverse versus hypotheticals, and this one's really cool. So, JJK, love it. The boys, love it. I thought the last season was probably the weakest season, but the way it finished off was like, yo, bring on the next one. But this is going to be cool. Homelander's like the most powerful guy within the boys. And my initial thought, I'm usually wrong because I'm not the power scaler, but my initial thought, if you were to say to me, Homelander versus Jujutsu Kaisen, I would tell you that Homelander wins. The way his laser beams can just like destroy everything, his flight, his strength, the way he just manhandles like people, you know, like just punch like Black Noir, the way he like, spoilers if you've not seen it, but like, that was a big deal. So, yeah, let's get into this. This is Homelander versus Jujutsu Kaisen is embarrassing.
As the strongest character in his universe and one of the most violent and unhinged characters I've ever seen,
Such a good villain, though, as well, if you know what I mean.
Homelander stands as one of the most terrifying and intimidating villains in recent television history.
Yep.
Homelander is someone that only exists in the way that he does due to his power and feelings of superiority over his entire world. Today, I'll be seeing just how far that elitist mindset takes him. And in order to do so, just as I have with many other characters in the past, I'll be placing him against the Jujutsu Kaisen universe, testing the Homelander's real strength.
This is going to be interesting, because I've just instantly thought, the one argument that always comes up is Gojo's Infinity, but let's see.
As I do with every cross-verse battle like this, I'll start by establishing the base stats of both camps, namely Homelander.
Yeah.
Now, Homelander, much like Gojo and Sukuna, gets the benefit of having all scaling that exists within his universe applied to him as the strongest, so things can remain relatively simple.
Cool.
In regards to his strength and durability, Homelander should at least be able to withstand building level attacks, as he's established to be stronger than Soldier Boy, who was calced with his last explosion at the end of Season 3, to be able to generate at least that much power. Scaling to this explosion would be pretty consistent with Homelander's abilities as well, as Queen Maeve was able to survive the effects of it without dying, and it's implied or outright stated numerous times in the story that Homelander could kill her at any point with relative ease. When looking at what Homelander has actually done in the mainline TV show, this is probably as high as his strength and durability scaling go, for the simple fact that Soldier Boy and Queen Maeve at this point are the closest things to rivals that Homelander can find, and in their own ways had the ability to match blows with him or outright deal damage to the character. When looking for statements or outside material, however, we come across a feat from The Boys Diabolical, an animated spin-off of the show that has a few canon episodes to the main story.
Oh, right, okay. I've not watched Diabolical, but if they are canon, I might have to actually check it out before Season 5 then. Alright, okay.
And in the episode 1 + 1 = 2, Homelander is able to survive the heat and concussive force of a chemical plant blowing up directly in his face with minimal damage.
Oh.
Due to the size of the explosion in the chemical plant itself, this feat was calculated to require city block levels of durability on Homelander's part to survive,
I love how the red line indicated that.
which is a definitive upscale from his previously established durability and strength.
Okay.
This would basically be the limit of his power unless you look at a statement made by Madeline in which he says that every weapon on the planet is incapable of harming him, which would logically include weapons of mass destruction like nuclear bombs. If this were the case, this would mean that Homelander is capable of withstanding attacks that could level an entire city, which is significantly more impressive than anything he's actually shown on screen. The validity of this statement is rather ambiguous though, as it's only stated at one point in the story by a character who would have much reason to embellish or outright
Yeah, like she has reason to big him up because like she's promoting him at the time, isn't she?
lie about the power of someone that they consider to be their personal weapon. Leaving this as a potential high-end skill for Homelander though, it would mean that he can take nukes to the face without worrying for his life. I want to make clear that this doesn't mean that his attacking power is in the same ballpark, and that would probably more closely align to a city block or even building levels of durability shown more explicitly in the show. In regards to speed, we know that Homelander can pretty regularly fly at speeds speeds exceeding that of sound, as this was recorded when he was searching for Translucent in Season 1.
Yeah.
This level of casual speed is in line with him being superior to A-Train, whose top recorded speed is when he races against Shockwave, in which he just barely surpasses Mach 1. Being faster than A-Train isn't all that impressive though, as despite being shown to dodge light-like attacks in the show, the surrounding context of this feat explicitly demands that they be slower than legitimate light. A-Train being capable of dodging Starlight's attacks only serves to downplay the speed of the beams, because we know pretty definitively that A-Train, even when at peak performance, doesn't have feats or statements that would justify him scaling to light, much less the near-death version of the character that performs this feat. That being said, Homelander does seem to be able to greatly surpass his Mach 1.5 speed feat, as he was able to move fast enough to outspeed the explosives Butcher had planted, which places him anywhere from Mach 10 to Mach 18.
Okay.
His travel speed specifically can be pushed above Mach 30 if you take his statement about going to space as anything more than him puffing out his chest in very Homelander-like fashion. It would require speeds 30 times faster than that of sound to reach escape velocity, which is why this statement, if true, would mean that Homelander is capable of at least flying this fast. While not outside the realm of possibility, Mach 30 would certainly be the extent of Homelander's speed based on everything we've seen and been told about him in the Boys universe. The main issue with Homelander's speed though is that in most instances it's shown to be his travel ability rather than his capacity to react to or throw attacks.
Right.
In fact, we see pretty regularly that Homelander is not a very good close quarter combatant and relies oftentimes on his superior durability,
True,
strength,
alright.
or heat vision.
Yeah, alright, fair. I give that, yeah. So, like, close combat, if the guys from JJK just jump in on him. All right, okay,
While he
okay,
might be
interesting.
fast enough to escape orbit through flight, and that itself is ambiguous, it doesn't necessitate that he can actually combat characters with that level of speed. To keep things simple and in Homelander's favor though, we'll just argue that the speed he was able to react to the bombs at, which was anywhere from Mach 10 to Mach 18, would basically be his reaction speed and combat speed in general. This just leaves us to talk about Homelander's basic abilities, but I mean, if you know anything about Superman or just watch The Boys, his powers are pretty self-explanatory. He has your standard superhuman stats that we just went over, super hearing, X-ray vision, a heightened sense of smell, flight, and heat vision. Nothing super complex by any means. And with Homelander being sufficiently scaled, we can now look at the Jujutsu Kaisen universe to see how they stack up against the strongest soup in The Boys.
I'm really intrigued. I am very, very intrigued after all that scaling.
Jujutsu Kaisen has a pretty wide range of characters and levels of strength, so I'll make sure to hit the main feats, calcs, and statements in order to give you guys a good understanding of how powerful characters in this series are from top to bottom. On the relatively low end of JJK characters, you have feats that are calced anywhere from small building level to multi-city block. The random curse that appeared in the first episode of the series is capable of generating small building levels of power. Yuji, before even ingesting the first finger of Sukuna, is capable of blocking attacks from that same curse, and Megami survives multiple attacks from it head on. This is really about as low as JJK characters can go, as these feats are pulled off by beginning of series level threats. Moving slightly above that on the output totem pole, you have Mekamaru's ultimate cannon feat, which was able to obliterate a
I thought we were going Maharaga straight away, and then it was like, what the fuck?
decent chunk of the forested area he was fighting in, and was subsequently calced to be city block level. This same attack, while capable of damaging Panda's core, wasn't enough to tear through his physical body, which is a pretty good indication of Panda's external sturdiness. Panda and Mekamaru, while semi-grade ones in their own right, aren't that strong in the grand scheme of Jujutsu. This level of power for lower level JJK characters is pretty consistent, especially when considering you have characters like Mahito, who are capable of causing earthquakes on a similar destructive level just by unleashing their curse techniques out in the open. The special grade finger bearer that Megami fights against also has a city block level feat that is derived from it completely expelling Megami's domain with a flash of curse energy. So even for the most conservative Jujutsu Kaisen scaler, it's safe to say that city block level is viable for lower end characters. Moving slightly up the ladder in the verse, we come across feats that range anywhere from small town to small city level. Ishigori's Granite Blast in chapter 176, Arame's maximum output Frostcom in chapter 215, the ice structure Arame also creates in chapter 237, Sukuna's Shibuya Fire Arrow, and Jogo's Maximum Meteor are all feats exemplary of this level of output. While many of these feats come from higher tier characters, in many cases like Sukuna's Arrow, Ishiguri's Granite Blast, or Jogo's Maximum Meteor, the attacks that cause such damage are far from that character's most powerful. In Sukuna's case, he's missing multiple of his fingers that allow him to reach his full capabilities. And with Ishiguri and Jogo, we know that the creation of their domain and usage of techniques within it should far surpass any of their other abilities. Not only do we know that domains amplify the user's potential, but Kenjaku also makes it clear that domains are the pinnacle of sorcery. Speaking of domains, the domain scaling argument kicks things yet into another gear and makes any character equal or even relative to Dagon and Jogo capable of outputting at least mountain levels of energy. This is simply because the creation of a domain entails that a separate space is created from cursed energy, meaning that Jogo's construction of a mountain and Dagon's creation of an island do in fact scale to their output ability. While the outside of the barrier isn't nearly as large, we know that the interior and exterior of the domain are contradictory due to the manipulation of space granted by barrier techniques in general. This is to say that the outside and inside dimensions of a domain being incongruent isn't an inconsistency within the scaling, it's simply a feature of the ability. We know for certain that characters like Gojo, Sukuna, Kenjaku, and Yuta should all be capable of clashing with and winning against the likes of Jogo and Dagon in a domain battle, which would place their maximum output of cursed energy on that level as well. Now, a mistake I've made in the past when using this argument is saying that the domain scaling necessarily correlates to a character's durability or output outside of a domain, and that's just not the case. At least not always. When discussing anomalies like Gojo and Sukuna, that's much more likely, in part because we see Gojo outright tank Jogo's domain attacks, but in most cases, this just wouldn't be an applicable line of reasoning. Instead, characters of this caliber should just be able to exert that much force when using a domain or some other analogous form of cursed energy output. What substantiates the domain scaling a bit more, at least for the higher tiers of JJK characters, comes from Gojo causing an earthquake in chapter 221, and him being stated to be capable of powering an entire country with his power alone in chapter 200.
I mean, that's a statement, isn't it? But still.
Both instances lead to potential island levels of output being possible on Gojo's part, and in the earthquake feat specifically, it's plausible that Satoru didn't even use any offensive techniques, and the mere unsealing of his power caused that. In which case, the level of strength him and Sukuna have access to would increase even more. If you wanted to, you can push the envelope even further with some planetary statements and feats that come from Yuki's black hole creation, and Sukuna being stated to potentially be a world-ending threat, but these either come from hyper-specific circumstances that likely won't be created in this video, or potential embellishments of the aforementioned character's power and destructive ability. In general, planetary JJK is an extreme highball that's mostly unfounded and contradicted so far. Now, speed-wise, Jujutsu Kaisen can get a bit annoying, but when splitting it up into separate tiers, it does become...
Yeah, the speed scaling's a bit iffy with JJK, isn't it?
A bit more manageable. You got low-end feats that would place characters as subsonic due to many being capable of dodging, reacting to, or outright catching gunfire, or some characters perception blitzing others that should have heightened reaction times. While conventional weaponry is stated to be effective against sorcerers by Kenjaku, this is most likely because they can't be sensed with curse energy, more so than the speed and piercing power being a problem for a sorcerer when they are prepared to fight. And I mainly say this because in almost every instance of a gun being used in the story, characters are capable of avoiding it pretty easily. Beyond this, you can account for Choso's piercing blood being faster than sound, and Shibuya Yuji and Dorame being able to react to it, albeit with some trouble. Pre-awakened Maki was able to catch a bullet fired at her point.
Yeah, but that's a weird one. That's a very weird one.
Blank, and that's calced to be about 7 times the speed of sound.
That's just a weird thing that happened, though. Didn't Gege come out and say something about that?
This level of speed kind of gets contradicted by Naoya's Mach 3 statement upon becoming a curse. So if you believe this is where the verse more accurately scales, then Maki and everyone that is relative to her at this point in the story would be vaguely above that level of speed. There are some ambiguous lightning timer feats that come from Akari or anime versions of Toji, but they are pretty contentious in and of themselves and probably exist to be more of a highball than a super consistent scale for the verse. Just like I did with the boys, I'm gonna nip some light speed scaling in the bud for Jujutsu Kaisen right now. Well, yes, Mythic Beast Amber Kashimo is capable of firing off attacks that are electromagnetic in nature, which would make them at least relativistic. The nature of Sukuna avoiding that attack is far too ambiguous to properly determine if it was a purely speed-based feat or him simply aim dodging. The attack charges in front of Sukuna's face in one panel with Sukuna noticing this, and in the next, the attack is fired and Sukuna avoids it. But aim dodging doesn't necessitate relative speed, especially when in that same fight, a sonic-based attack is able to hit him. And if he were relativistic in speed at this point, an attack moving at the speed of sound would move in literal slow motion from his perspective. This is not to say that Sukuna, as a matter of fact, had to aim dodge Kashima's attack, rather that the feat is too ambiguous to decide whether or not he was able to dodge it purely based on his own reactive speed. What's more consistent for high-end characters and is more concrete is them basically being able to blitz piercing blood and make the speed of sound look really slow, which would require speeds anywhere from 8 to 24 times the speed of sound in Sukuna's case because of how extreme his movements are relative to the attack. As Jujutsu Kaisen speed scaling always is, there's definitely a bit of confusion that can be found when trying to compare different interpretations of feats and statements made by characters within the series. But
I think speed is going to be the downfall of Homelander in this as we're going through this. Speed and physical close quarters.
just as I always do in videos like this, I'll be going over the large range when comparing these two camps. I'll also bring up specific curse techniques and abilities based on individual context, which means we can jump right into the discussion of how Homelander truly does against Jujutsu
Alright, cool.
Kaisen.
Let's go.
I don't know how to say this without sounding like a biased hater, so I won't try.
Okay.
If Homelander steps foot in the Jujutsu Kaisen universe, he's getting absolutely cooked.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
By a pretty large portion of the main cast.
Okay, it's fair. Like I said, I'm not the power scaler. Once you go into it, as soon as he's talking about speed feats and all that stuff, it's like, okay, yeah, maybe. But initially I would have thought. I think it's because Homelander is like the pinnacle of his verse. So yeah, you'd assume, but never mind.
From a stat perspective, Homelander actually does have the advantage over a decent bit of JJK characters, especially the lower tiers, but he honestly gets outclassed strength-wise pretty early on. The best durability feat Homelander has, the one where the chemical plant blows up in his face. Yeah, well, Ishigori's first on-screen granite blast would literally turn him into ash. That same attack that Ishigori can casually spam is the attack that would take Homelander off the map like it's nothing, at least if you're abiding by his demonstrated feats rather than ambiguous statements, which we will talk about, but first let's talk about what Homelander's actually shown. Now, to give him his credit, Homelander would basically be able to physically overpower characters up until he reaches that special grade, high grade 1 level of character, and then he just gets smacked up with no difficulty, and that's not when accounting for Homelander's lack of skill and arrogance. Even if you were to plug the controller into Homelander and make him fight as intelligently as you possibly could, he would run up to Ishigori, he would run up to Yuta, he would run up to Yuki, Kenjaku, or any of the Disaster Curse spirits and just get fried in a straight up fight. When leaving Homelander in character, there are honestly a lot of lower tiers that mess him up too. Take Iguruma for example, a character that by all accounts is pretty weak in the physical department. One opening of his domain, and all of Homelander's powers are getting confiscated without a doubt. And from that point, he'd just be fighting up a mentally frail man with a god complex and no powers. Now, you may rebut this by saying that Homelander has no cursed energy in his universe, and that would extend across verses. But when making videos like this and discussing these kinds of scenarios, I generally approach it from the perspective of any given character being given the equivalent of a normal human's amount of cursed energy in Jujutsu Kaisen, which would give him an insignificant amount of the stuff to be caught within a domain. If you don't like this point though, you'd also have to accept that Homelander wouldn't even be able to kill a flyhead due to his lack of cursed energy, and I'm gonna be honest, that's just against the spirit of the match. You have to take some creative liberties in making this line up, but I think just having the characters and their powers interact as they should makes the most sense. Now, even aside from Higuruma's domain, most completed domain expansions just put Homelander through hell. Gojo and Sukuna's domains have obvious results. Yuta's hitting him with all kinds of techniques that he just isn't equipped to counter. Yorozu is erasing him from existence with Perfect Sphere. Kenjaku's crushing him with gravity. Jogo is melting him. Dagon is making him get eaten by fish. And Mahito will irreparably transfigure his soul. Even Megami's incomplete domain has the win con of sinking him into an abyss of endless shadows due to Homelander being incapable of applying cursed energy to his feet. And when acknowledging that Homelander's best attack potency feats are anywhere between building to city block level, well, even low tiers can stand to take attacks from him without being in danger. Keep in mind, Episode 1, Yuji and Megumi were getting smacked by a curse with strength feats comparable to Homelander's best. Even without domains, Yuji, Yuta, Maki, Toji, Gojo, Megumi, Sukuna, Kashimo, Ishiguro, Yuki, Kenjaku, Geto, and several other characters just put the mitts on Homelander to no end. Even with the noted speed difference, it doesn't matter for many of these matchups because his attack potency just sucks. Even if you highball his punches and lasers to city block level, those same attacks would just get tanked by Panda. So you can imagine how little they'd hurt characters with real solid durability feats. And conversely, the Jujutsu Kaisen characters would not have any trouble hurting Homelander for the most part. Now, this level of embarrassment occurs even when Homelander is 1v1ing a lot of these characters, and I'm sure you can imagine this gap growing exponentially wider with Jujutsu Kaisen being put into effect. Now, if you were to argue that Homelander really is more durable than a nuke, then he'd still get his ass kicked, just by less people. Basically, anyone on Dagon's level and above with a domain would absolutely fry him due to the aforementioned domain scaling. Now, a really funny fact popped into my head as I was talking about Homelander getting tossed and turned like a salad, and that's the fact that he just really sucks at fighting when you look at him. Like, you could take Homelander and almost any character in JJK, make it equal stats, and he loses. I'm talking Haruta, I'm talking Nobara, I'm talking Ino, Charles, Awasaka, Haba even, all because he is that unskilled and pretty basic in his moveset and fighting style. Now, this aside doesn't impact the actual outcome of the main topic in this video, but I thought you guys would all get the same kick out of that realization as I did. In any case, even if you highball Homelander's durability and his speed to the highest extent possible, and you place him up against Jujutsu Kaisen's strongest respectively while downplaying them, he still gets absolutely cooked. Gojo doesn't even need Infinity to assist him in the fight, as his physical stats would allow him to bully him up close.
Damn, I suppose, actually, yeah, if you take the moment with him and Miguel, whoa, alright.
And Homelander might just have a mental breakdown trying to figure out why invisible slashes keep tearing him apart if he were to go up against Sukuna. If you couldn't tell already, Homelander just does not stack up to the Jujutsu Kaisen universe in any way, shape, or form, even when running the ones with the characters. And if this were to be a team deathmatch style fight, as this video is framed, that ass whooping just gets worse.
Right.
If you enjoyed the video and want to see more power scaling content, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell, and check out these videos where I put other characters from other universes up against Jujutsu Kaisen to see how they run the gauntlet. I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.
Great. I think it's always funny when I'm completely wrong. I think, yeah, like I said, it's because Homelander is the most powerful person within the boys. You'd think, alright, throw him in, like, another verse, he must do okay, but doesn't seem it. Absolutely manhandled by the looks of it. So yeah, that was cool. That was a really interesting one. Love me crossverse videos. But anyway, thank you to my patrons. If you want to have your name at the end of every video, or want to be able to watch Patreon-only reactions, such as the original Dragon Ball series, links in the description to the Patreon page. $1 a month is all I ask to help support the channel. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you for that. Thank you all for watching. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of this? Click like, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave comments down below. Let me know what I should watch and discuss in future videos. And I'll see you guys all next time.